Hello, this is Mark Selinsky of Kensington Security Consulting, and today I will offer you some key points from my latest book, Cauldron of Terror, Hamas, Israel, and the World. Let's go straight to it. October 7th, 2023 changed the Middle East and the world. It was a slaughter unlike anything the Jewish world had experienced since the Nazis. You know that. Well, let me offer you a take on the attack and its after effects that I discuss in the book. But I want to emphasize two elements that I think are of great interest to this audience. First, I will discuss the counterterrorism strategy and how effectively it was applied to Hamas. Second, I will address how Hamas is defined. Others and I suggest that Hamas is what it is, not what we want it to be. Third, I will examine the global response to the attack. I think it shocked most of us. Almost immediately, Israel, the victim, became the genocidal victimizer. What were Israel's counterterrorism policies? In mandated Palestine, the British faced challenges from Arab hit-and-run tactics, targeting British and Jewish interests, and pursued an unconventional response. They found their solution in Captain Charles Orda Wingate and sent him to Palestine in 1936 to suppress the Arab rebellion. The uprising was led by Arab nationalists and some Islamists and involved Arab fellahin, or peasants. His legacy has endured across generations. Moshe Dayan studied directly under Wingate, adopting his unconventional tactics and style. Dayan and other platoon commanders learned ambush and nighttime attack techniques. Elements of Wingate's strategies and tactics remain a core part of the IDF's doctrine today and have also influenced U.S. counterinsurgency strategies since September 2001. Wingate's doctrine of unconventional warfare in Palestine was based on four key pillars: a focus on the population, harsh measures against enemies, extensive intelligence, and the ability to seize and hold the initiative. First, his doctrine prioritized a population-centered approach that included efforts to protect civilians not involved in militancy. This strategy mirrored what the United States attempted in Vietnam and Afghanistan, where it proved considerably less effective. The idea behind this population-focused strategy was that killing civilians would be counterproductive and could create more militants. Angry and alienated citizens are more likely to support terrorist groups. Wingate influenced Dayan, who, many years later, would adopt a more conciliatory attitude toward non-hostile Arab populations to win their respect and support for cooperation. This did not work with Hamas. They saw Israeli efforts to employ, feed, and medically treat Gazans as concessions and weaknesses. Hamas exploited this by placing weapons depots in kindergartens, mosques, and hospitals, making it harder for Israel to protect noncombatants. A second aspect of Wingate's doctrine was the harsh, sometimes brutal treatment of militants. This severity enabled the SNS to maintain control at night. Israel's first prime minister, David Ben-Gurion, acknowledged that Wingate's methods were incorporated into the IDF's doctrine. In the 21st century, Wingate's strategy of harsh treatment of enemy forces has been reflected in Israel's targeted assassinations, house demolitions, and administrative detention. During Hamas's early years, its leaders feared that an Israeli missile could kill them and their families at any moment. After the October 2023 attack, some critics argued that Israel had become more lenient over time. From this perspective, Hamas's junior and mid-level operatives, collaborators, militant rhetoricians, clerics, and recruiters no longer feared or respected the IDF. A third element of his strategy emphasized the importance of strategic and tactical intelligence. Strategic intelligence involved a thorough understanding of Arab social structures, leadership, clan affiliations, customs, ceremonies, and military capabilities. Wingate highlighted the importance of regional and cultural knowledge among his officers. He also emphasized the importance of current actionable tactical intelligence. The October 7th attack came as a strategic surprise. The tactical information was out there but was not interpreted correctly. A fourth element of Wingate's doctrine was seizing the initiative, which required Jews to leave the safety of their settlements to confront their Arab enemies. Jewish Palestinians would determine the timing, location, type, and scale of the attack to keep the enemy off balance and unable to anticipate the next move. Israel lost the initiative to Hamas and became reactive to attacks. Wingate's innovative approach to doctrine and strategy is still celebrated, with Israelis calling him friend or haver in Hebrew. However, the events of October 7th raised questions about how far the IDF had strayed from Wingate's core principles. Okay, that is the exegesis of Wingate's counterterrorism strategy. Now let's turn to Hamas. What is Hamas? Key question, because there was not a clear understanding in many political and military circles. Hamas, an acronym for Harakat al-Muqawama al-Islamiyah, or Islamic Resistance Movement, is defined as a terrorist organization, a national liberation group, a religious social movement, an Islamo-fascist force, and a counter-entity. The Council on Foreign Relations describes it as a militant offshoot of the Islamic Brotherhood. The Brotherhood promoted a radical form of Islam, often referred to as Islamism. I call Hamas an Islamo-fascist organization. Some people don't like the term Islamofascism, but I think it is the most effective way of communicating the essence. Islamofascism describes a blend of radical Islam and militant authoritarianism. It has made its position on Israel clear. It must be destroyed. All its authoritative documents stress this. Most of them offer homicidal anti-Semitism. It is a product and exponent of the Islamic Brotherhood. There is a 1988 charter and a 2017 revision. The revision prettied up the homicidal original charter, but marginally, its goal remains the erasure of Israel and its reconstitution as an Islamo-fascist country free of Jews and based on Islamic law or Sharia. The world reacts as real-time news of the bloodshed filtered into Western media. World leaders expressed shock at the magnitude and depravity of the violence. Then U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken compared the crimes to those of the Islamic State. The secretary enumerated some of the day's horrors. Babies desecrated, young people were burned alive, women raped, parents executed in front of their children, children in front of their parents. The United States and European nations initially condemned the attack without reservation. However, many Middle Eastern countries leaned toward neutrality or criticized Israel in their statements. In the second week of October, 44 nations denounced Hamas and its acts of terrorism. 20 nations expressed solidarity with Israel, while others insisted that Israel immediately cease its attacks on people and places in Gaza. Additionally, countries such as Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Syria blamed Israeli leaders for the regional violence. International support for Israel, which emerged in the immediate aftermath of the bloodshed, quickly waned. Any compassion European diplomatic circles held for Israel quickly diminished after the IDF began targeting sites in Gaza. As Israel struck these locations, international sympathy began to shift toward Palestinians and at times toward Hamas. Almost immediately, diplomats from around the globe called for a ceasefire and criticized Israel for failing to comply. Norway, Ireland, and Spain announced plans to recognize a Palestinian state. Support among Americans also began to decline. the International Criminal Court threatened to charge Israel with, in its own words, war crimes and crimes against humanity. Soon, politicians, diplomats, professors, and students began discussing Israel's alleged genocide. Genocide? Yes, this was the charge, and it was made loudly and wildly. Although they may seem like unlikely bedfellows, European leftist politicians and Islamist groups share a common hostility toward Israel. This animosity is partly rooted in long-standing strains of anti-Semitism and also in anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism, and anti-Americanism. They believe their goals align with the Palestinian cause. In Europe, a dynamic and growing Muslim population is capturing politicians' attention. In some parades, radical Muslim demonstrators have called for the establishment of a caliphate in Europe. This helps explain why anti-Israel rallies across Europe began even before the IDF's retaliatory operations. Protests erupted in several European countries, particularly Germany, Britain, and France, which host the largest Muslim populations on the continent. European social media displayed support for Hamas and hostility toward Israel. Many posts showed solidarity with Hamas by tweeting, Allahu Akbar, long live Palestine, and resistance is yours. There was also snarky schadenfreude at the suffering and deaths of Israeli victims. On the day of the attack, some Europeans reacted to the graphic images of Israelis being killed by Hamas. This is better than Hollywood. In response to women and girls being raped, some tweeted, they had a good time with her, it seems like, and they are just taking her to a party, she will be the guest of honor. That's the price paid for being cute. Another theme was revenge, such as eye for an eye, baby for a baby, or feel the pain of how Israelis massacred Palestinian kids for 70 years. And in the United States, self-styled liberal and Muslim civic organizations swiftly and strongly embraced the Palestinian cause. The Party for Socialism and Liberation, the World Workers' Party, chapters of the Democratic Socialists for America, DSA, and independent chapters of Black Lives Matter, BLM, were vocal in condemning Israeli retaliation. Several organizations, including the DSA, approved Hamas's attacks on Israeli civilians, stating it is not terrorism or anti-Semitism to fight against this injustice. The DSA post read, today's events are a direct result of Israel's apartheid regime, a regime that receives billions in funding from the United States, and added that we unequivocally condemn the killing of all civilians, but claimed the attack was not unprovoked. Maïs. BLM made a symbolic reference to the October slaughter. On October 10th, the Philadelphia branch displayed an image of a paraglider, directly referencing the airborne element of the attack. Next to the image was the message, I stand with Palestine. Mosques were filled with anti-Israel sentiment. Although Hamas has been designated an international terrorist group, some Islamic and hard-left leaders openly support it and its leaders. At a mosque in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, a speaker at Al-Auda prayed for the souls of the honorable and beloved martyrs and freedom fighters, Ismail Haniyeh, Fuad Shukr, rest in peace. Months after the October attack, speakers at Iran's International Al-Quds Day rally in Houston, Texas, praised the October 7th attack in front of the Israeli consulate. Okay, what are the takeaways from the attack and the response? First, why did public opinion turn so quickly towards hostility to Israel? I can only speculate, and you may have your ideas. I think the anti-Semitism was subsurface for many years. In Europe, it has been trenchant for millennia. It has been expressed in different forms. It has existed as Christian anti-Semitism, then as national anti-Semitism, then as racial anti-Semitism, and now as an anti-Semitism that demonizes Israel. Among Muslims, it is driven by the Quran and the Muslim Brotherhood. In America, I think it is different. This anti Semitism is driven by the Green Red Alliance, the partnership of Muslims and American leftists. You saw the eruptions of support for Hamas on campuses and the resulting congressional investigations. Why? Because for decades, professors have indoctrinated students and the common culture has cast Israel as a colonial enterprise. Also, Students for Justice in Palestine was organized and well funded. The DSA rallied young people to assail Israel. Well funded NGOs such as Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and Doctors Without Borders are heavily funded by Soros like charities, as well as the Thani family in Qatar. Why have so many organizations called Israeli policies genocidal, which is absolutely false and an inversion of the truth? Much of it is meant to hurt Jews. Douglas Murray talks about this. So I'll put the second takeaway in question form. Did anything positive come out of this? This is an awkward question. What good could have come from this? Well, there have been unadulterated catastrophes in Jewish history, such as the Crusades and the annihilation of Rhine communities. The Chmielewski killings of the 17th century and the Holocaust produced nothing positive. But the Kishinev pogrom of 1903 captured the world's attention and led to Jewish emigration. The Dreyfus case revealed deep-rooted and undeniable anti-Semitism in Europe. It led to Zionism, which I think is a positive development. Kristallnacht was much the same, and I could go on. And for October 7th, 2023, well, much like the Dreyfus case and Kristallnacht, it revealed a broad-based, latent anti-Semitism that erupted. It was much deeper than many thought. It is no longer deniable. Certainly, being opposed to Israel is not necessarily anti-Semitic, but the wild, conspiracy-based, hallucinogenic charges against Israel are. Finally, the attack challenged the counterterrorism policy of successive Israeli administrations, which I addressed at the beginning of the talk. The policy of mowing the lawn or being almost exclusively responsive has changed. The peacenik kibbutznik approach is largely seen as having failed. What can we do about this? Well, that is the subject of future talks. This concludes this episode presented by Kensington Security Consulting. I hope you found it informative. Nothing in the talk represents the official position of the United States government. I am very excited about the publication of Cauldron of Terror.